You are listening and watching the Two Chumps Football Podcast. That's Emil Calamino. I'm Chad Wilson, and we are here. It's middle of bowl season. I can say that because we already popped a few bowl games off. I saw a couple of empty stadiums where these things were going down. We've already had round one of the playoffs jump off. Emil and I will talk about our picks that we made there last week because we're forced to. We're forced to do that. And then we are getting down to the final 2 weeks of the NFL season. Emil, I think the NFL had a game on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's like Happy Days. Remember the beginning of the Happy Days?
It's going to be that way.
I don't know how I feel about the NFL trying to drop all these games off. I don't know what they promised the Kansas City Chiefs for them to okay 3 games in 10 days, with one of the games being on Christmas Day. They had to promise them something, Emil. I mean, come on. They had to.
I thought that whole setup yesterday on Netflix was trash.
You didn't like the Netflix presentation of the NFL?
No, listen, I understand it's a business.
People talking about how clear the picture was.
How clear it was?
Yes, this is what I heard. Yes,
my picture was fine. I had people in the area, and I think a lot of it. I don't know if it was dependent. Like, remember the Netflix fight with Tyson got shut down?
Yes,
I had people with severe buffering problems, and it wasn't just one person. So, I mean, here's the thing. I get the NFL, like, they're trying to obviously always increase the pie, right? Because that's what they do. They're a business. It's just that I almost feel like it's to the point now of silliness. Like, I think they're going to keep pushing the envelope and see at what point do people jump off. Like, it's like a business deal, right? I'm going to keep asking you till you get up from the table and say, nope, I can't do that. And then I know that I got you right at your limit, and I pull back to the, you know what I mean? I think that's where they're at. Like, let's try it on Amazon. Let's try it on Netflix. And then finally someday, when the public goes, no, that's okay, we're not doing that, then it's like, okay, we've got as much as we can.
I think to a certain degree, the public has done that in certain instances. I think I remember a Cardinals Chargers game earlier this year that did very low in terms of viewership. It was like a second Monday Night Football game. But when I see stuff like this, I just remember a scene out of the movie King of New York. I don't know if you ever watched it. Christopher Walken was the main character in it. And in this scene, he had just been released from prison. He was a noted drug dealer, and he's released out of prison. And while he was out, rival gangs and drug outfits had seized control of New York City, his turf. Now that he was back, he was trying to reestablish that I am who I was. I'm back, and things are going to be. And there was a situation. They were playing cards, and he had to pull out a gun and shoot a guy in front of a bunch of other guys that had kind of taken over. And so he said, paraphrasing, "You guys got fat while I was gone. From now on, nothing goes down without me being involved. If a nickel bag gets sold in a park, I want in." And so this feels like what the NFL is doing. There's not going to be a streaming service that is available to the public without them having a presence on it. So we're going to get on Peacock. We're going to get on Amazon. We're going to be on Netflix. We're going to be on YouTube, wherever they're streaming shows and it's popular enough for people to be talking about it, we're on. They have a presence. They don't stream games on HBO Max, but that's where Hard Knocks is. And they will move into every streaming service that is available. And if they've got to have guys play 3 games in 10 days to do it, they'll do it. They've got to send you over to Germany, they'll do it. They send you to Brazil with green on. Green. They don't care.
But I think it's kind of an insult to fans, and maybe the fans are that naive. I don't know. I don't think they are. When you tell people, right, like we always kid, right? The NFL does a lot of virtue signaling, right? Well, we don't want guys getting concussions, so we're going to make this goofy kickoff rule, and we don't want this, we don't want that. And oh, by the way, we're going to put it takes all of us and end racism across the end zones, even though we don't really run our league that way. Sure. But we're going to do that. How much can you care about players' health and safety when they suit up 3 times in 11 days or 12 days.
I mean, I don't know if you saw Ben Roethlisberger's
I
tweet.
sent you Ben Roethlisberger's quote.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say he made a great point, but it's friggin' like this is obvious.
Sapp said it on our show when he used to be on years ago. He said that back when they started Thursday Night Football.
Yes. You're not physically well enough after a Sunday game to do that. That's just the way that it is. So I think none of that stuff matters. You're going to do it. And in the case of, even for the NFL, 3 games in 10 days, you may not even find that in an 11U football team playing in a Thanksgiving tournament. You might not get 3 games in 10 days. This is at the highest level where they have turned around and done this. But they're going to grow this game. I wanted to say this before I forget. The NFL is running on analytics now. The teams are doing it. They're making 4th down calls on it, They're making field goals. I think in the league offices, they obviously run off of numbers too, and the numbers that they're going to run off of are going to be viewership. That's the number. But like I was saying about college football, you can get fooled by viewership. Viewership could be, well, I'm tuned in to these games because I have the Saints +6. That's why I'm watching it. Or I have Alvin Kamara in my fantasy league. That's the only reason I'm watching the Saints playing against the Green Bay Packers. And if that starts to be all that your viewership is about, there could come a time where it falls right off the cliff.
Well, to draw an analogy, you make a great point. What you're really looking for, and I don't know how you do this, I'm sure there's a way to do it, I just haven't thought about it. You're really looking for what you're calling almost a consumer confidence number, right? Mm-hmm. I can look at raw data in the economy and say, oh, well, this is what the raw data tells me. But why do they do consumer confidence? Because down the road, your confidence today is going to dictate how you behave tomorrow, next week. So I'm going to be likely to see troughs based on a consumer confidence number. And as that number goes lower, I can chart out, hey, 6 months from now, things aren't going to be so good because Chad doesn't feel real good today. What you're really looking for is an emotional investment score or something like that. How emotionally invested am I? Am I watching this game because I have money on it or I'm in a fantasy league? Or am I watching this game because if this team blows this game tonight, I'm going to break the controller and I'm not going to get to sleep for an hour and a half? That's emotional investment.
Yes, Emil, and that brings up a good point. And I would say if I was in the NFL, if I was in the league offices, I would certainly be spending a lot of money on surveying my fan base and asking important questions. And I would do it periodically and keep comparing these numbers and see, do they trend one way or the other? I'd ask, do you feel the NFL is, how could I word this? Do you feel the NFL is, I don't want to use the word fixed, but you know what I mean. I'd ask, on a scale of, yeah. On a scale of,
am I watching WWE?
Yeah, do you feel the outcomes of games are fixed, staged? I would ask that question, and I would do it maybe twice during the season or every season and see how that trends. I would ask, I would give several options as to why you would watch a football game. I would put that on there and see how many I get. Are you watching? Or do you watch games because of fantasy sports? Are you watching games because you bet on the sport? Are you watching games because you're a diehard fan, and so on and so forth? I would ask those kind of questions, and I don't think that they do, because I've been involved in this game in all sorts of ways, short of actually coaching in it. I've been a fan. I have the NFL package. I've never received a survey like that, and I've never heard of anyone receiving a survey like that. So I think the NFL can't really run off of the viewership numbers, because that could be a house of cards, and they really should start taking data like that. And
here's what I'll say before we get into some picking for you people listening. Don't worry, we're getting there. The NFL, you'll want to stay around for them, and maybe we'll fix the college thing, but we'll get to it. Okay, but here's what I'm going to say. I thought years ago, I really figured, well, the thing that could upstage the NFL was if college football could get a really good playoff. Okay, but while they got to the playoff, at the same time, they've said hold my beer to the NFL on emotional investment and really took away what attached fans to their college teams. They took away that I watched the freshman come in, and I remember when he couldn't block me if I was playing defensive end, and I watched him become an all pick the conference left tackle or all American this or that because you followed the player through the program. And sure, there was always a transfer here and there, but generally you were there for your 4 years or 3 if you were great.
Sure.
That's gone. So college has almost one up the NFL in removing the emotional attachment, and the NFL is very smart. When they went up head to head against the playoff last weekend, they're not going to tell me it's a coincidence. They knew they were going head to head against the college football playoff. The schedules were out there. Who'd they put on? Kansas City Chiefs in the 1 p.m. slot. They're winning now, right? Big viewership. They're the Patriots now. The Pittsburgh Steelers in the 4:30 slot.
Right.
Okay. Thanksgiving Day, the 4:30 slot. If you put any two garbage teams on Thanksgiving Day in that 4:30 slot, people would be burping, either eating dinner late at 5, or if they eat early, they're burping on the couch half asleep. But you take the Dallas Cowboys and put them there. The Cowboys had 3 wins or something going into that game. 4. They drew 38.4 million viewers.
Right.
It was like the highest rated game so far this season. So the NFL, they're clever. Like these are not dumb people running the league in terms of business.
Mm-hmm.
They get it. Like, okay, we're going up against college, no problem. Give me the Chiefs, give me the Steelers. Okay, we're good.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't put the Cardinals Chargers.
Of course. Right.
Right?
Of course. Yeah, that's crazy. So, yes, folks, we're going to get to college football picks, NFL picks in just a moment. There was a lot of talk last week in the college football playoffs about the quality of the games. Are you with the predominant argument that I saw on Twitter, which was the committee got this wrong? Look at the trash games that we got in the first round. Look at these blowouts. My answer to that was, in my lifetime, Emil, I've watched plenty of wild card round blowouts. And those teams earn their right to play there. Hell, I was obviously a big Los Angeles Rams fan, and I remember having to stomach a 51-14 loss to the Washington Redskins when Eric Dickerson was on the team, by the way. I had to stomach that 51-3. I think I might have been selling them short. These things happen.
Let me make a couple points on this because this is interesting, right? So we finally get our 12-team playoff. It's going to be 14 in a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And now people out here go, oh, maybe we only need 8. First of all, you gotta look at it this way, right? You're trying to set up a meritorious system where there's rules and ways for teams to play their way into this thing, okay, from other conferences. If all we want is a tournament between the SEC and the Big Ten, well, damn, we can create that. Point being, Alabama had every chance to be in this thing. Win the SEC. That's the teams you're playing. They didn't win the SEC. So therefore, matter of fact, they weren't even in the top 3. So
maybe don't lose to Vandy?
Right. So here's the thing. We already know you weren't the best team in the SEC this year or near the best team. Why do you earn a right to get to try it again? I mean, like, that's they gave you 3 teams. I'm sure next year the SEC will cry and they'll get 4. And probably they should at this point. But my point is they have to create a system for people to win their way in. College basketball, we're not stupid. The 68 best teams don't play in the tournament. I don't think Robert Morris, when they win their conference, is one of the 68 best teams. But they play Division I basketball. All those kids want a shot to play on a big stage, and that's what they play for all season. They earn that right, and maybe one year they upset a Power 4 team, and they'll remember it the rest of their lives. So I don't need the 8th team in that example from the Big Ten. I'll take Robert Morris. That's fine. Don't finish 8th.
Yeah, I feel better trying to see if an SMU can pull off something crazy and get there, rather than watching an Alabama come in and eventually lose because you made it clear this year that you aren't as good as the top 4 or 5 teams in the country. So yeah, Alabama, maybe you can win a first round game. Maybe.
Yeah.
But I know you get to that second round, you're probably going to lose. You're going to lose in that third round. You're not going to make it all the way to the end. You've established by your loss to Vandy, getting blown out by Oklahoma, you don't have what it takes this year to make it to that last game. So why are we wasting time there anyway? I'd much rather see if, hey, on this one given day, SMU can pull something off and maybe get on a ride or maybe not, whatever.
Yeah.
But I want to see an upset Penn State. That's better than me watching Alabama beat Penn State, get to the next round, and obviously.
Right. And here's the other thing. I don't view the way it played out necessarily as a bug. I view it as a feature. And here's what I mean by that. I think if you have a playoff system, by and large, right, the upsets should be meaningful and special so that we remember them. And it means your system is valid. If every year I turned on the NCAA tournament and the 15 seed beat the 2 seed,
we did something wrong here.
Right. Like baseball this year, you and I are big fans. The fact that the best team in the American League played the best team in the National League, not because they were our teams,
is how it should be.
Right. The top 4 teams in a sport like baseball, you played 162 games. The top 4 teams, generally, if your system is working properly, 2 of those 4 should be in the World Series because you played 162 games.
I would dare say when we got down to the Final Four in baseball, 3 of the 4 were the top teams. Wasn't it not?
Right. What I'm saying is this year it worked. I viewed it the opposite of a lot of fans. When Texas was playing Arizona the year before and Arizona won 84 games, to me, that's not a feature of your system. There's a bug in your system because you just played a ton of baseball games, and I know Arizona is not one of the 2 best teams.
Yes. A little easier to say that.
But what I'm getting at is I think the results validated the system so far in a lot of ways.
I would agree, except I think long-term down the road, we've got to get voting out of this thing.
You got to get voting
out of it.
Voting should be out of it completely. What they need to do is come up with a system where, I mean, to me, in the Power 4 conferences, make it simple. If you make the championship game, you're in.
We're going to probably talk more about this in the offseason.
Yes.
We have Power 4. We've got the ACC, we've got the SEC,
Yeah.
Big 12, Big 10. So that's really who this thing is about. Yes, we're throwing a Boise State and at-large in there. Whatever. People will get enough of that. I don't know. I can't think off the top of my head because it's not so simple as saying the Big 10 has 10 teams, the Big 12 has. I can't really off the top of my head say how many teams are in the Big 10, Big 12, and how many total teams make up those 4 conferences. But we should be able to break those 4 conferences into 8 divisions of an even amount of teams and have an NFL playoff type system where you play your way in and we don't have voters sitting in a room and people with their varying amount of opinions deciding who the hell plays in the playoffs.
Listen,
what other sport do we do this?
No, and the problem is they've kind of rigged this thing, and I don't mean in a nefarious way. I mean, they want to give the pretense of fairness. So they said, okay, if you're non-Power 4, but you're ranked higher, blah, 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 you get a bye, okay? And I listen, if they prove me wrong this week or next week, God bless them, okay? But if Boise goes out there and gets trashed by Penn State, why the hell did they have a bye? What, because a bunch of guys pretended that the Boise State schedule is comparable to a schedule from the SEC or the Big Ten? Are you kidding me?
That they've got these teams with buys as double-digit dogs tells you a lot.
Of course it does.
And you know Vegas is going to get this right.
Of course it does. So here's the thing. If they prove us wrong, then good. That means maybe there's some merit in your system. But if Texas and Penn State drag those 2 teams all over the field, then I'm here to tell you, back to your point, let's stop pretending that we have a playoff for everybody. Let's hone in on what we have. We've got AAA football. We're paying players, some of them 7 figures.
Yes.
Let's create a AAA playoff, just like they do now in baseball. The International League champion plays the Pacific Coast League champion.
Emil, at this point, we might as well, because you've got players making more money than guys that are on the contracts in the NFL. We're going to have to come to that realization. And like I said, we're going to touch on this more in the off season as we come up with our grand plan for how college football
Fixing college football once and for all.
save them from themselves, as they seem to be catapulting in the wrong direction. I don't care what the viewership says, because you and I have been around long enough to see sports that were deemed popular in our culture in this country fall flat off the face of the earth, and you thought, oh, that would never happen. And its heyday in the middle of it, there's no way you watched boxing in the 80s and watch Hagler versus Hearns, or watch Leonard versus Duran, or you watched any of those mega matchups and say, man, one day boxing will kind of just be a thing off to the side. I mean, Tyson Fury fought last week. No one knew it. And you couldn't say that in the middle of the 80s, like, oh, this sport's going to fall off one day. You would have never, you would have called me drunk. You would have called me.
The fact that you grew up in Trinidad for your first 5 or 6 years, and the fact that we have about a 4-year age gap, okay? Some of this you won't remember other than people telling you, okay? But I was 7 years old, 8 years old in the mid-'70s. You'd watch an Alley or a Foreman or a Frazier fight on Wide World of Sports.
Well, I'm old enough to, and I was in the country when that would happen.
Yeah.
Saturday afternoon, you're watching a big-time fight. A lot of those welterweight fights were that on television on Saturday in the afternoon, by the way.
Yes.
You would get those fights. Hey, I'm old enough to remember horse racing being one hell of a thing. It's non-existent.
No, and that's also what drove the popularity. They were on those times because kids would watch it. But as they became less popular, there's no window. Then it became pay-per-view, so we start going for niche markets. Hey, there's 1 million people that'll pay $99 for the fight. That's still a lot of money, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we got to be careful here, because I'm telling you, the way college football is headed right now,
I'm seeing a lot of disgruntled fans tweet, and I know they're still watching because of the betting element.
Hey, sports fans, if you're looking to take your game day excitement to a whole new level, then you got to check out Bovada Sportsbook. Whether you're into football, basketball, it's baseball playoff times, pretty much any sport, Bovada has everything you need. Best odds, live betting, and fast, secure payouts. And here's the best part. When you sign up today, Bovada is giving you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's up to $250. That's free money to get you started just for joining the action. It's super easy to sign up, and they've got you covered with all the top games, player props, and more. Ready to bet, win, and repeat? Head over to Bovada and get in the game. Check out the link down in the description below, and let's go get those winners.
And that's not going to be enough to keep people if the you know what hits the fan. The last one I'll talk about is college basketball. Emil, I watched zero college basketball. And 10, 15 years ago, I was locked in on college basketball.
Well, we've known each other long enough now that when you met me 20 years ago, I'd have my brackets, more than 20 years ago. I mean, I had everything. I knew who to fill out. Like, I don't even get in the pools anymore because I don't know enough about the teams. I'd be picking the guys that I could read in the top 25. Oh, okay, they'll pick them. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't watch the game.
Zero college basketball games this season. Zero. Not one. I don't think I've watched a quarter of a college basketball game.
Listen, the enjoyable part for me in college sports, right? The fun of it was, as a USC fan, I would, razz a Notre Dame fan and back and forth, or an Oregon fan or whoever. It's hard for me to do that as an adult now, because it's like, well, wait a second, like 40 players on everybody's roster are turning over. I mean, like,
yes, and then to also attach yourself in emotionally to the potential future for a player that you've seen in college. Like, hey, what will Rocket Ismail be at the next level? What's that guy going to be? Or, man, will Reggie Bush really be like this as a pro? Like, I'm attached to that, especially if he came from my team.
Right.
Don't have that anymore.
Don't have that. So,
with that said, though, we watch the games for these reasons. Who are going to cover the spreads this weekend? So
let's cover last week and keep it simple. Chad and I picked every playoff game between the two of us. Unfortunately, the only pick that was correct was Notre Dame. Chad had them -7. I was a winner. And I'll be honest, this is a new experience. I know I keep saying that, but this playoff I kind of felt like there'd be a few point spread covers like the NFL style, where the wild card round, you got to be like, hey, there's going to be dogs that cover and win outright. So on my side of the ledger, I figure, okay, I'll take SMU. I'm going to take Clemson. I'm going to take Tennessee. They all got blown out, 0-3.
I think with the absence of the Clemson-Texas game, I think there's going to be a serious factor in Southern teams traveling north because that's never happened before in this time of year. Prior to this, everything was through the bowl system. So if Penn State had a good year, they come down, they go to the Citrus Bowl, they play in Florida, or they play in Texas, or they play in California. We've never had a system or anything where a team like SMU from Texas has to go play in Pennsylvania, or a team like Tennessee, who's even more marquee, has to go now and go play in Ohio at this time of year. It's a factor for sure.
I think that's a big variable. And then the other thing, because you're playing for all the marbles in this playoff, you can eliminate the handicapping aspect of regular bowl games where you're looking for motivation. Everybody's motivated.
Right.
One thing that was clearly evident to me in all three of those games, really, even the Clemson game, even though Clemson got from 31-7 to making it a
They were handled. No, they were handled.
Yeah, I mean, all three of the teams I took were completely out-talented.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame completely out-talented Indiana. I mean, it wasn't a matter of fact where you look and go, oh, well, if they played 10 times, that team only would have won 6. Nah. I mean, I watched those games. That they were just complete mismatches talent-wise, in my opinion.
Yes, that was the case, I think, in Notre Dame, Indiana. But I think a big factor in that also is just experience of being in that situation. I think Notre Dame has been there, the players have been there, the coach has been there, and that was just zero.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't really feel like, even though it was the one winner, I felt like at least Indiana didn't look like completely like they didn't belong on the field. Like I watched that SMU game, and like the difference
versus varsity.
Yeah, the difference in the trenches. I mean, that poor kid from SMU, the quarterback, he looked like a kid playing on I-5 in California at rush hour. I mean, he had a look on his face like, what the hell is going on here? He was seeing goals.
Emil, when you start doing the at-large and you start bringing those teams in, that's going to be your issue. Because I'm here to tell you, as someone who played at a lower-level D1 school and then ended up playing at the best D1 school at the time, that's the big gap. It's in the trenches. It's the O-line and the D-line, because at Long Beach State, man, we had skilled players that could rival some of what was at Miami. Hell, our running back is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Our receivers played several years in the league. It's just in the trenches, we had no one that could deal that was on the level of anyone at Miami.
I hate to, I feel less bad about it, if that's a word anymore, because they're getting paid. So I used to say, oh, they're college kids. But SMU's left tackle, I still remember his number, okay, because I saw his number all day. 54, okay? Watching him try to block Abdul Carter was like watching a turnstile in the subway in New York.
If that kid thought he was an NFL football player at the time, I don't know where he is in school. If he's a senior, those commercials where they say there's a bunch of other people are ready to go deep, that's going to mean a whole lot more to that kid. If he's young, hey son, get on it, because you're going to see that every week in the NFL. So,
yeah, I mean, it was a mismatch there. I mean, so anyway, you had our lone winner. You had a really difficult loss the other night. At least it should have been at worst a tie. I mean, San Jose State.
You're hanging there for 5 hours, like get the dub.
Yeah, so we struggled in the first round. I reluctantly, because I'm going to let you go first, because the NFL, I mean, we owned it as a group last week, and you've owned it all year. So I'll go first in college and reluctantly give you my 3 picks.
Go ahead.
First, I'm starting with a non-playoff game. I'm going to take Baylor -2 against LSU, and my theory is simple here. Baylor's played really good football the back half of the season. Well-coached team. They look like they're trying to build something toward next year. I take a look at LSU, same record. but not where LSU expected to end their season, playing Baylor in a meaningless bowl game. So this is a challenge to me for Brian Kelly. He's going to have to get his team and convince them that they should care. I don't think he's going to do it here. I think LSU is mentally checked out. They always have NFL talent there. I don't even know how many guys they'll have not playing in this game. I don't really care because I just think this is a game where don't overthink it. Baylor is building something. I think it'll mean a lot more to Baylor. So I'm going to grab Baylor.
Brian Kelly breaks out a fake Cajun accent during the week. Do you still?
He could break out the fake Cajun accent. He could break out like a Trump type dance or something like that. I don't know. He could do anything. I mean, who knows? You know what I mean? Brian Kelly's crazy, but I don't think he's going to care in this game. He might not care, to be honest with you. Okay. Now I'm headed to the playoffs. Okay. And I'm here to tell you, if Will Howard doesn't muck up the playoffs, Ohio State has the best roster. I mean, they lost by 1 early in the year at Oregon. I still don't know how they lost to Michigan, okay? I'm still trying to figure that out. He did his damnedest against Penn State. He threw a pick 6. He fumbled going into the end zone for a touchdown. This Ohio State roster, if they get good average quarterback play, they're going to be tough to beat. And I'm using your theory here. This is a rematch. It's a neutral field rematch.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll do some things defensively that confuse Oregon. They won't play them the same way because the first time around it didn't work, okay? And they've got the athletes to pull it off. So I'm going to – and my only hesitancy here is until Ryan Day shows me himself on this stage, I'm always going to feel less than 100% confident. But I really do like the situation here. I'm going to take Ohio State minus 2.5. Finally, if not now, I'm not sure when, okay? I'm going to grab Notre Dame plus 2, okay? You've been higher on them all year. I don't love their quarterback throwing the ball, but he does enough things with his legs that I think he'll be a real pain in the ass for Georgia when they get pressure. Kid's a long strider. He can move a lot faster than he looks like he's moving, and I'm thinking he can get himself out of some pickles. I don't like Georgia playing the backup. I know you get 2.5 games out of the backup, but I'm a little worried about a college kid in this moment with a Georgia offense that wasn't really dynamic beforehand. I mean, it's not like against good defenses, Georgia was typically going up and down the field. It was the defense setting up the offense in both Texas games. So I think Notre Dame's defense is stout enough to make this a very low-scoring game. This feels like a 19-13 type game. And I think, obviously, Notre Dame wins it because I'm only getting 2 points. So I'm going to take Notre Dame plus 2.
All right, summing things up for Emil here in the college football picks. He likes Baylor minus 2 over LSU. Thinks they're trending in the right direction. LSU, not so much. Thinks Ohio State gets it done in their rematch against Oregon. He likes them minus 2.5 over the Ducks. And then finally, he thinks Notre Dame. If this is the time, Notre Dame, for you to beat the SEC team in a postseason game and reestablish the old years, the 80s, and all that good stuff, he's going to take them as 2-point underdogs to Georgia. Emil, here's what I'm going with. I'm going to start off, like you, with a non-playoff game. Georgia Tech has done some really good things this year. They started off the year quite well against Florida State. And off of that game, I guess everyone had some really high expectations for Georgia Tech this year. And to a large degree, they lived up to it. I'm not sure what happened in that game over there in Ireland. Did it really send Florida State in the wrong direction, or was Georgia Tech really like that? You know what, Emil? They came back and they cost my school a chance to be playing in this playoff. Everyone can point to that loss that Miami had against Georgia Tech and say, hey, yeah, that's what did it. So Georgia Tech is a really good football team. They're playing a Vanderbilt team who knows nothing of postseason football. It's football ends in Thanksgiving in Nashville every year. All right. So talk about being in uncharted waters. That is where Vanderbilt finds itself. I think they're a good football team. I think Vanderbilt did some good things this year. I just think a lack of experience right here is going to really hurt this team in this matchup. And I just think Georgia Tech has displayed, at least in the skill positions, that they can play at a SEC level at those skill positions. And I just love the coaching staff at Georgia Tech, and I think they'll have these guys ready for a game like this. So as a small favorite here, I'm all over Georgia Tech versus Vanderbilt. So give me them -3. I'm going to agree with you on the Ohio State versus Oregon matchup for a lot of the reasons that you said. You know how I am with rematch games, especially when you had one that was really tight the first time. No one really dominated each other in this football game. And oh, by the way, the game happened in Eugene, Oregon, where now, yeah, we're not playing in Ohio, but we're at a neutral site. So if you were only just on a pure logical sense, keeping things basic, if you, Oregon, were only 1 point better than Ohio State on your field, are you better than them when it's not on your field in a neutral area like we're going to have this game? I don't think so. And I think Ohio State heard all the criticism after Michigan, and rightfully so, man. Damn, you let a very subpar Michigan team plant their flag in the middle of your stadium. And the good thing that I saw is for all of the fight that you had once that flag got pointed, you brought that fight forward to your playoff game against Tennessee. And there's a tremendous amount of, and this sounds crazy for an Ohio State football program, I think a tremendous amount of confidence that was brought back into the Ohio State Buckeyes by the way that they dominated Tennessee. I can just see the machismo. I can see the bravado. I just see a really good feeling coming over Ohio State. And I love the way that they played. They looked like they were playing for something. And there's one thing I know about football that you will continue to hear me say on this show is that football rewards people who have something to prove. And Ohio State looks like they've got something to prove, not only in throughout the playoffs, but to Oregon, a team that they lost to earlier this year. So give me Ohio State as a small 2.5 point favorite. And then finally, this is one of the games that we spoke of. If you're Boise State, you had a bye week because that's how this system's set up for you. But you step up now and you're a double-digit underdog to Penn State. Why? Why would you be that? I just think a number like that coming out would send everyone to the window for the Boise State Broncos. I'm going to go to the side and thinking of they're double-digit underdogs for a reason. This is Penn State, and this is a Power 4 football team that is able to recruit like a Power 4 football team. And I just spoke about it. That's going to be in the trenches. Penn State's going to have an advantage in the trenches, both on offensive and defensive line. And if Boise State can't run Genty the way that they want to run them, they don't really have a football team because everything feeds off of that. If you take that away and they find themselves behind, they've got to throw the ball around more. That means that defense is going to be on the field more, and it's just going to be a really bad situation. So I'm going to lean on the thought process of Boise State's a double-digit underdog for a reason. We saw what SMU did. We saw what happened with Indiana. I think we're going to get some of that here. So give me Penn State as an 11-point favorite in this game against Boise.
And you know what sticks out to me in that game? Obviously, everybody sitting here would go, oh, well, Penn State's going to take away the running game early and try to make Boise prove they can throw the ball. That's nothing genius, right? The only difference is 10 or 11 teams on their schedule knew that too. They just didn't have the players to execute it.
Penn State will.
Penn State does. So, yeah. So, my friend here is going Georgia Tech -3. He and I are on Ohio State -2.5. And he's got Penn State -11. And now we get...
Let's talk about something more pleasant.
To the favorite part of the show. By the way, if you're putting those bets in, go to Bovada. They got the lines. They've been around forever. They're a show sponsor. They're the oldest sports book on the internet, right?
Yes.
So that's where you want to put that in. You can move the lines around if you don't like them, change the odds a little bit. And we'll get to why you should be doing that with some of these pro games we picked, okay?
Exactly.
So last week combined, we owned the pros. We were 5-1. My friend here is 34-14 on the season. So, you pull out your handy calculator, puts him right around 70%. So if you're following him all year, you've got a huge stack, especially if you're only an NFL bettor.
Well, 20 games over 500, folks. Yeah, I mean, if you weren't a complete idiot and you followed this, you made some money so far.
Yes. And the only loser you had the Steelers +6. We talked a little bit about that. They played that Saturday spot, and the Ravens seemed to get, yesterday they rolled.
I think that game turned on the turnover going in with
it did, and I think the Steelers may be showing a little bit that the rosters, they probably played over their heads for quite a while this season, which is a credit to their coaching. So that was a loser. You had the Lions, big winner. You had the Stones to take the Raiders against the Jags, which they won outright, and it was a 1-point spread, so you thought they were winning outright. So you went 2-1. I went 3-0. I've got my record up to 25-22 on the season. I started with the Chargers. I felt those two teams were evenly matched. Thursday football, the drill. Take the home team. It worked out. I had the Redskins +3.5. Jaden Daniels at the end there for the outright win. It didn't hurt that Jalen Hurts, pardon the pun, was hurt.
Yeah.
So he missed.
Anywhere you can get, yeah.
Hey, listen, I'm not proud. And then finally, the Cowboys +4.
Great pick.
For the outright against the Bucs, and that was not a with my heart pick. I just felt like it was a good spot for Dallas with the Bucs playing back-to-back road games, having throttled the Chargers on the road the week before, maybe coming in feeling they're a little bit better than they are, and Dallas showing some spunk. So I turn the floor to you.
Absolutely. All right. No pressure here. Final 2 weeks. I'm trying to maintain. I'm trying to stay at this 70% level or even higher. It'd be good. Don't think I've ever finished a regular season above. I've come close before, but never at or above 70%. So here we go. Emil, once again, I don't know how or why I keep getting pulled into Raider football games. I think they are the team whose games I have picked the most this year. And as much as I would like to avoid it, the odds makers continue to pull me in. What in the world would make the Raiders or anyone seemingly watching or following the Raiders think they should be a road favorite? This is a team where their fan base is openly pissed this week that they screwed up a top pick for the NFL draft. They wanted this team to tank and they wouldn't do it. Well, all right, the Raiders are rebels, man, and people want them to win this week. So continue with that rebel. This team shouldn't be favored on the road, okay? I get that on national television, the New Orleans Saints got shut out. Man, they were in Green Bay. They're home this week. And I'm here to tell you, when you get to those late stages of the year and there's nothing to play for I'm talking the players-wise, maybe the administration upstairs have their motivations. That has nothing to do with the players. I don't care about ushering a guy in here to take someone else's job. The Raiders are in New Orleans. The Raiders are in the city of New Orleans without a care. Come on. Come on, man.
Well.
Yeah, no. They're in the city of New Orleans. They're going to have a good time. They're going to miss Belichick, and I don't think they'll be worth a damn on Sunday as the Saints, who must. Listen, you're a man first before you're a football player. You got completely bent over last week against the Packers and shut out. If that doesn't motivate you, I don't care what's going on postseason-wise for you. If that doesn't motivate you to come home and fix things a little bit, just like as a man, then, hey, Saints, don't come back for the 2025 season. Just go get relegated. You know what? I hear there's like a really good, potentially semi-pro college football league that's going to sprout up. Maybe you guys jump in there and see if you can beat Texas or Georgia next season.
Keep that quiet. The Raiders might be going there.
I mean, they might hop down there. But anyway, Saints, I like them at home as an underdog because this is a complete slap in the face. All right. The Dolphins. Yes, your Dolphins. You got love them or hate them, they will break your heart. This is a great team at home under the sun with the humidity when it comes to this time of year. But when you travel them north and the temperatures drop and the wind blows and it's chapstick time, they fail to show up. That's just the way that it's been. This is how it was in the Marino years. It's how it's been in the 17 other quarterbacks that came after Marino, in between Marino and Tua. And it's especially so for Tua and this offense and this team. Yes, Cleveland is on the ledger, one of the worst teams in the league. But I'll tell you what, Cleveland still shows up every week and plays hard. They play hard, all right? They just don't get the result at the end that they want. I actually think this week they might. I think Cleveland is a live dog. I think Cleveland can actually win this football game. And because of that, the 6.5 points that they're getting from the Dolphins is juicy. I would lay off this game if the Dolphins were 3, but 6.5? Nothing the Dolphins have shown on the road in these type of conditions says they should be this big of a favorite. So I'm going to go with the Browns as a home underdog. The Detroit Lions, yes, they got back into Lions football of 2024 last week. That's not really exactly what's catapulting me here. If I'm looking at a long-term view, the Lions have been a good football team all season long. Yes, they got their mojo back last week, but even if they didn't do that, they are going and they are engaging in a rematch of a heartbreaking playoff game last year where it looked to the world, Emil, like something that has not happened in your lifetime and mine, which spans over 100 years, folks. We had never seen the Detroit Lions in a Super Bowl, and it looked like we were heading in that direction, and we didn't get it. So this is a big revenge game, and throughout my life in paying attention to the NFL, these type of games tend to work out for the revenging football team, even with the game occurring at San Francisco. The 49ers, Emil, you really hit something right this year. It was the 49ers and their luck with injuries running out. Boy, were you right about that. They're hurt everywhere, at every level. And just right now, with them being out of the playoffs, this is a place where they just have not been in the last few years. I'm not sure how hard they could fight here. And even if they were fighting hard, the Lions are just going to be a more motivated team for 2 reasons. A, the revenge, which I discussed, and B, they are trying to head into the playoffs with momentum, and they have a chance to be a 1 seed. Everything in terms of motivation is on the side of the Lions. So even with them laying 3 and a hook, I like the Lions because I think they're going to do serious damage to the 49ers here. I think for their psyche going into the playoffs, the Lions need to win this game convincingly, and that's going to be the way that they approach it. So give me the Lions.
70% are here, and we have some tips with these picks. He's got the Saints +1 at home against the Raiders. Now, his next pick, he's taking the Browns +6.5. When you're on Bovada, I'm going to tell you, pay the little extra juice and take the 7. Do yourself a favor. And his last pick, he's got the Lions -3.5. Again, when you're on Bovada, putting that in.
Right down to 3. They might make you pay 120 for it, not 115.
Bump it down to 3. You probably won't matter, but just in case it does, so you don't get backdoored into a half-point loss, take the Lions -3.5, but get it down to 3. So one more point you were making about teams and fans, and you're talking about people being angry about picks. I'm not a big believer in that. First of all, where you pick, you still have to hit the pick.
Sure.
Whether it's 1st, 5th, 10th. Secondly, I'm a big believer that you build a program, and it's always better to win than lose.
I'm going to add to that, Emil.
Yes.
Sometimes you get saved from the pick you were going to make.
Yes.
To the Raiders, so much so. So you don't get that first quarterback pick. You probably would have picked the wrong guy. So you get the guy you probably should have gotten, but you weren't going to pick.
Yes.
They'll never tell you, but Houston might really have been. They probably were going to pick Bryce. They probably were.
I've had this debate with many Cowboy fans like myself who are angry that Dallas has won 4 out of 5, and frankly, could have beat your son's team if not for a weird play. It could be on a 5-game heater. And I said, listen, that serves you far better long term than getting a few notches higher, because it shows something about that there's a winning culture there. In other words, like, yeah, we don't go out here and lay down. That's not what we do.
Right.
So anyway, getting to my picks, mine are simple and quick. I don't even need a ton of analysis. You watched the Cardinals last week, right? They went to Carolina, a team that was throttled the week before by Dallas. They go there needing to win to set up a game this week that would have playoff implications. They go and allow 36 points to the Panthers. Worst NFL offense this year, statistically. I think they're either 31st or 32nd. They go and give 36 points up. Now they're on a Saturday game against the Rams team that's getting hot in first place with a great coaching staff, a really good quarterback who can spin it, 2 good wide receivers, and you got an unmotivated Cardinal team. There's no way I see the Cardinals showing up for this game with their hair on fire. I think the Rams blow them out. And remember, earlier this year, the Cardinals beat the Rams 41-10. If you
Yes.
don't think the Rams aren't aware of that, you're crazy. This one's getting ugly on Saturday. Give me the Rams -6.5. Secondly, Packers. Probably not a good thing that happened to them, winning 34-0 on Monday night, because they're probably thinking they're very, very good. And they're a good team, but they're probably thinking they're a little bit better than they are. And we keep getting this utter disrespect for a 13-2 Minnesota Vikings team. The Packers, their playoff fate is sealed. They're going to be on the road in the first round. It's just a matter of where they're playing. They can't really improve themselves much unless you want to guess which opponent you're better against. And that never works anyway. The Vikings, on the other hand, need to win this game to set up a battle royal for the NFC North next week against the Lions. I don't think they're going to lose at home. I just think, we keep doubting the Vikings. They keep finding ways to win and win impressively. I think they take care of the Packers here. Give me Minnesota -1. Finally, the Dallas Cowboys served up the NFC South, I should say, potentially on a silver platter for the Atlanta Falcons. Okay, Falcons just got to take care of their own business. And they finally moved on from Kirk Cousins, checked down Kurt. We're done with that. They got the kid they drafted in there. They're getting 4 points against, a Washington team that's kind of defensively challenged. Sounds funny, Dan Quinn's the coordinator, but Washington gives up a ton of points and yards. This thing will probably turn into a shootout, back and forth. Probably decided by a guy with an odd-looking shoe at the end by 3 points. But again, I find Washington in a place where they really can't much improve their playoff positioning. They're probably not winning the NFC East unless the Eagles find a way to lose both games to Dallas and the Giants. That's hard. So they're going to be on the road somewhere in the first round, whereas Atlanta has a division title and playoff berth at stake because there's no wild card coming out of that South. So I think they're the more motivated team. I think the talent's relatively even, so I'll take Atlanta +4.
All right, summing things up for Emil here. Wants to keep things really simple. Arizona looked bad this week. Got no reason to play this week. They didn't look good last week. The Rams are trending in the right direction. He wants them as 6.5-point favorites over Arizona. Oh, by the way, it's a revenge game. He also thinks it's time to stop doubting Minnesota. All right, Green Bay looked really great on national television last week. So what? Minnesota is at home laying less than 3. What's going on? We'll take Minnesota. And he likes Atlanta now that they are firmly back into this playoff race to handle their business against a Washington team that might be a little too giddy after last week's events. All right, so he likes the Falcons +4, and that's going to do it for us, man. We've set you up for the post-Christmas holidays. You guys can play with your toys and also play with these winners that we have served up for you, especially the ones in the NFL. Are you kidding me? We are absolutely crushing this thing over the last few weeks. You'd be out of your mind not to hop on this train if you have not done that already. All right, so go ahead and get that done. And of course, as always, check out our sponsor, Bovada Sportsbook, one of the oldest and safest sportsbooks operating online with odds on everything out there imaginable. And yes, as Emil alluded to, you can play around with those lines. You can tease them up, down, etc. Be smart about it. Don't be a cheapskate and take a loss. Why hang with a hook if you're trying to lay 3.5 or lay 7.5? Don't do that. Get it down. Move these lines in the right direction. Give yourself every chance to win, because you guys should know by now, as we're at the end of the season, how difficult it is to win some of these games. So go ahead and do yourself a favor, and you can do all of that at Bovada Sportsbook. So hit the link in the description of the show and open yourself an account with Bovada Sportsbook if you've not done that already. I think I've covered it all, other than to tell you guys, have yourself a great weekend. And we want to once again thank you for watching and listening to the Two Chumps Football Podcast. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done it already on your way out. Until next time, for Emil, Calamino, I'm Chad Wilson. Thanks for watching the Two Chumps Football Podcast. We'll see you guys next week.